Dave Weinberg, now part of our 97.3 ESPN coverage. You can read his article, Best Worst of Eagles 2019 Season, on our website right now at 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Dave, 34 years in the rag that comes to my door, but now he's moving on to new things and new opportunities, and warm weather today means he gets to play golf too. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing well, Pete. Actually in the parking lot at Cape May National as we speak.
That's what I like to hear. Hit them long, hit them straight, fairways and greens. Let's get into something green, and that's the Eagles, right? I mean, good Lord, Dave. Even from afar, you have to sit there and look at a week that the Eagles had and just shake your head a little bit, right? I mean, the optics from the team, and Doug comes out. Where do you begin? Some of the headlines I thought were outstanding in the fact that, you know, they basically just broke it down to talking about the Eagles and saying, do the Eagles lack organizational focus? Or Jeffrey Lurie plays the blame game at Doug Peterson's expense. I mean, this is your wheelhouse. You wrote columns like this you wrote a column for so long. Do they lack organizational focus? Let's start with that.
It does seem that way, Pete. Yeah, I was really as befuddled as anyone at just about the way everything went down with the assistant coaches. You know, Doug gets up at the podium on Wednesday and proclaims that Carson Walsh and the offensive coordinator, Mike Rowe, are both going to be back. Next day, about face, they're both fired. I have to think that it wasn't Doug's decision to make. I know he kind of took credit for it. I have a feeling that he was ordered to do that, and yeah, it's kind of strange. It doesn't seem like Doug ever had I guess quite the authority that most head coaches have, and that was evident by the way everything transpired.
I mean, is he just the good soldier, Dave, that he stands up there and, you know, well, the boss did this, so this is what I do, and I'll take the blame for it for misspeaking? Or do you think privately he's a little PO'd or ticked off, like, I want a Super Bowl for you. What else do I have to do to get some respect around here?
Yeah, you would think he'd have some cachet after winning the Super Bowl, giving the city its first, first NFL championship in 50-some years, and when he first took over the job, he made it clear that he just wanted to be the coach. He didn't want to get involved in personnel. He didn't want to get involved in salary cap issues, that kind of stuff. But as time is going on, I think he's kind of earned the right to have some say in his assistant coaches. I mean, if you recall, Jim Schwartz was hired like the same day Doug Peterson was. It wasn't his decision at all. He actually had a press conference the same day Doug Peterson did. And yeah, you would think over the years, I think he's earned the right to have some say, and it's clear that he doesn't now. It doesn't yet, anyway, because I think that he wanted Mike Rowe and Carson Walsh back.
Yeah, I've seen reports that he's very loyal to his assistants. I've seen stuff out there that basically talks about the fact that, you know, Doug might feel embarrassed or powerless, but, we all have a boss, right? And Jeffrey, it's interesting, too, your take on Jeffrey Lurie, because it doesn't seem like he's normally stuck his head in much over the years, and yet, is that what you think happened, that this was Jeffrey's call?
It's hard not to think that, or at least Howie and Jeffrey combined. Yeah, he's not a meddlesome owner by any stretch. Under normal circumstances, you certainly know Jerry Jones or anybody like that. He does go into the locker room after every game and congratulate the players or console them depending on the outcome. But he's usually not one to, he doesn't talk during the year at all. Generally, he used to have like a press conference at the start of training camp. He doesn't do that anymore, so you don't really hear from him much at all, if at all. So. For him to kind of exert his influence a little bit, that was a little bit surprising because he lets his I don't want to say underlings, but his employees, make the decisions, and he just kind of sits back and enjoys the moment. But so it was kind of out of character for him a little bit, I think.
Dave Weinberg is with us here on the Pete Thompson Show. 34 years at the Press of Atlantic City, our newest member to the 97.3 ESPN team's got his Twitter handle at Dave Weinberg19. Why 19, Dave?
Well, that's always been my lucky number. I was born on the 19th of April. My wife and I were married on June 19th. Our our son was born June 19th, and my brother's birthday is June 19th. So it's 19 has always been good to us, so I figured, what the heck, man, hopefully it'll be good to me on Twitter now.
Dave Weinberg, 19. All right, well, let me ask you about this, because Hunter and I got into it a little bit, too, about Doug's, sometimes he gets hamstrung at the press conferences. Sometimes he gets a little nasty when he feels challenged. And we got into a conversation like, shouldn't he be prepared? Like, shouldn't there be a meeting, like, anticipating what the questions are going to be? And then that kind of led me down the path, Dave, of, as the Eagles' message changed a little bit, not just in the way the press conferences are delivered, but do you sense in the time that, at least the last couple of years, that the way they deliver information, are they tripping over themselves, or are they successful at the way they get information out?
Yeah, they're much more guarded now than they used to be, much more defensive than they used to be. That might be due to a change in their communications department. I'm not real sure. I've always gotten along very well with those guys, so I really can't be too negative about them, because they've always gone out of their way to help me and to assist me in whatever I needed. But there is definitely a difference. Like you said with Doug, you get no information in terms of injuries. He'll get up there on Monday and say, well, we have one more test to do, and we'll let you know later in the day. But that test is never revealed, and the outcome is never revealed. Everybody's either day to day or week to week. You never know until Sunday if someone's playing or not, or sometimes Friday if they're definitely not playing. But yeah, they're a lot less forthcoming. I don't know if that's legal reasons or what, but yeah, lineup changes, all that kind of stuff. They seem to be much more guarded than they used to be.
Yeah, that used to be a staple of the Andy Reid press conference. I'll try my best to recreate it. Okay, injuries, right? That was like the start of every press conference, right?
Yep, then time is yours.
Right, no doubt. So medically speaking wise, have you noticed a change there too? Because that seems to be a common thread. They replaced their medical staff after the Super Bowl. Injuries were such a big part of the storyline this season. Are they getting injured more than before? Why is that happening in your mind?
I don't think it has anything to do with medical or training. Those guys are top of the line. If you get to be in the NFL and an athletic trainer, you know your stuff. You don't just hire somebody, that doesn't know what they're doing, and medical staff as well. I just honestly think it was just one of those years, even last year too, I guess, where, injuries happen in bunches sometimes, even oftentimes to a single position. You saw it with the defensive backs last year, this year wide receivers, running backs a little bit. It's just I don't know if there's anything you can do to prevent, like, some of them. I guess hamstrings and quadricep pulls, that kind of stuff, that could probably be better. They could probably be better prepared that way as far as, stretching and that kind of stuff. But, you can't possibly prepare for a torn ACL or a ruptured Achilles or, a torn hip flexor. That's just an unfortunate part of the game sometimes. And those things happen no matter what you do.
Yeah, the old school, the Dick Vermeils, the Vince Papales, the Bill Bergeys, they'll say it's because they don't hit anymore. There's no actual hitting.
Nah, I disagree. I just don't. I don't see the point of extensive contact, especially during the week of a regular season. As everybody probably knows, football is a violent game as it is. But when you're on the NFL level, as Doug kind of alluded to a couple of weeks ago, while we were supposedly sitting up in the press box eating our hot dogs and Diet Cokes,
I heard that line.
It's a very it's a violent game times 10 when you're in the NFL level. Anyone who's ever been fortunate enough to be down on the sideline, you'd be amazed at the speed, the power, the sheer physically of the game. Is like unlike anything you've probably ever experienced. It's every game is almost every tackle is almost like a car accident. It's just in the terms of the impact and the damage it can do. These guys are the fittest athletes in the world. You're talking about 6'5", 260-pound guys who can run like a 4.5 40. It's just it's just a different game. And no disrespect to Dick. I mean, he's a tremendous coach and a legend, but this is kind of a different game now. I don't think you can go to the 2-a-day practices, 3-a-day practices in training camp, and kind of hit during the week and then expect those guys to hold up for an entire season. I think the injuries would be even more. I think it would be more plentiful if you did that.
Dave Weinberg with us here on the Pete Thompson Show. You're doing two things in that answer. One, you're making me think of the high school football players that ran into me, and I'm cringing a little bit. My arm is twitching as those were high school football players that ran into me, and I fractured my left humerus bone, and there's nothing funny about it. I do tell a story.
I didn't mean to laugh.
No, it happened. I'm okay with it. I'm to the laughter part now. I did cover a game, because the first year that I came back in 2004, when I was working for TV 40, we could still shoot highlights on the sidelines. And that season,
okay.
That was the Terrell Owens season. They went to the Super Bowl in Jacksonville. We all remember that. But late that year, I definitely remember there was a play where Chad Lewis had caught a play and was coming toward me on the sidelines, and somebody got chipped, right? So I've got him in my viewfinder, and some other player who I could see wasn't going to hit me then got blocked and basically whooshed by me. And I just felt the wind. And I remember thinking at the time, oh my God, if that guy hit me, it would have been like a car hitting me. I would have been dead, And you do see instances, just to talk about the violence, you do see times where photographers get taken out, or still photographers, or sometimes TV cameras. The player runs right into them, and they have no chance. I can't imagine, with the pads on and whatnot. All right, Dave, I guess the other thing I definitely have to talk about, too, if we're talking about hits, the news comes out last night that there's not going to be a fine from the NFL on Jadeveon Clowney for that hit on Carson Wentz. Where do you stand on that whole hubbubaloo?
People probably aren't going to like it, but I don't have any problem with what the NFL did. I mean, I know that everybody wants them to make a statement, and Clowney is like the worst person on earth. Of course, these are the same people who wanted Clowney on the Eagles about a couple months ago. So it's funny how their attitudes changed. But it was when you view it in slow motion, there's no doubt that there was some malicious intent there, I think. But in real time, fast time, I'm not really sure. I don't think he intentionally went to hurt him. I mean, if you view it in the context of when it happened, how it happened, I don't know that Clowney was looking to, okay, if I can knock Wentz out of the game, we got a better chance of winning, that kind of thing. So I definitely don't think he should have been suspended. Maybe a fine, but I don't have a huge problem with what the NFL did.
Yeah, they reviewed it, said a fine was not warranted. I think the thing that bothers me about it is that there are people that are saying, well, he should have slid, okay? And the official response from referee Sean Smith was he was a runner at the time because he went forward. Well, wasn't there a game earlier this season against the Falcons where they said that he gave himself up when he was going forward? There's no consistency.
Yeah, you got a point there, Pete. It's they changed the rule this year actually to reflect the fact that you don't necessarily have to slide if you can dive forward, but if it's clear that you have so-called given yourself up, then you're not supposed to be hit, you're not supposed to be touched. So I guess it's just a judgment call on the part of the officials. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the officials as it stands. I think they do a horrendous job by and large. Sorry to say, but they've supposedly changed the rules, so if you go by that realm, then I guess it should have been a penalty.
What would change that? Do they need full-time officials?
There's been talk about that for decades even, and that might help. I mean, you do have officials who are, they have full-time jobs and do this on the weekends, and as is the case in college and high school. Maybe that would help if they're devoting more time and to developing their craft, improving their craft. That might help, I think.
So, Dave Weinberg, as you sit and analyze the season, I know it is, the people they were obviously bummed when the game was over. They were hoping to go on and play the Packers. And at the end of the day, you have to sit there and think about a team that, just looked absolutely awful in Miami and then somehow goes on to rally and win a couple games that actually make the playoffs. I mean, I think I saw that people were writing you should feel positive about that once the smoke clears. And yet now we get to that point where, all right, well, how are they going to look next year? Who's not going to be back? Malcolm Jenkins has already come and said, I'm not coming back for the same amount of money. I mean, who do you think's gone and who do you think comes back?
Boy, that's tough. I hate to kind of predict that kind of stuff because if I'm wrong, then I really look silly. I would say what I would do. My priority number one is to re-sign Malcolm Jenkins to a contract extension. He is the heart and soul of that defense. He hasn't missed a snap in over 2 seasons. He's the leader of that team, both on the field and in the locker room. You made this mistake a couple of years ago when you let Brian Dawkins walk a year too soon. And I know they've taken some flack and deservedly so for keeping guys maybe too long. The Darren Sproles is bringing back Deshaun Jackson. Jason Peters, I think, is another one. But Malcolm has shown no signs of injury, no signs of slow. Maybe he's lost a little bit of a step, but he's still one of the top safeties in the NFL, and you have no one to replace him at the moment. So he would be my number one priority to bring back. I know he's not a free agent, but he's made it, like you said, he's made it clear that he's not going to play on this current deal. So I would find a way to give him a little bit more money. As far as guys who shouldn't be back, I certainly mean no disrespect to Jason Peters. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. Certainly one of the best tackles in history. But I think his time has passed. You drafted Andre Dillard in the first round to be his replacement. It makes no sense to have him sit another year. He's clearly not a right tackle, but I think at left tackle, with another offseason of training, getting a little bigger and a little stronger, I think it's clear that he's the next linchpin of that offensive line at left tackle. And I would think. I know Jason wants to play a couple more years, but I would wish him well and let him walk.
You think it's possible?
Those are the 2 big leagues.
Sure. Do you think it's possible? And those are, first of all, I agree with you on Malcolm Jenkins. I do think they should learn their lesson from before. I'm 100% in lockstep with you on that you can't, you measure Malcolm Jenkins for what people like to look at stats and numbers and age. Just look at what the guy brings to the locker room. And I think that speaks volumes as to what Malcolm Jenkins' contributions are. I also think Jason Peters, I'm sorry, I love the guy. That's great, Hall of Famer. He's lost a step, clearly. Either he's good for one false start a game. You and I are pretty much in concert on all the things you just said. I will say this, though. Is it possible that Zach Ertz might not be back? I mean, is that something that Howie could dangle to try and get some other help?
Let's certainly hope not. There's no way you get rid of him. I know there was talk earlier in the year that, okay, maybe we can trade him because we have Dallas Goedert, but Dallas Goedert, he's not in the same league as Zach Ertz. I mean, he is. He's in the NFL, but he's not even close to the player that Zach Ertz is. There's no way you get rid of him. He's your number one receiver. He's been that way for the last couple of years. Arguably your most valuable player on offense. There's absolutely no way that I'm getting rid of him.
I mean, not for nothing, Dave, but how about the Ertz effect? Like, just when he's on the field, and you got to have mad props for a guy that comes back from a lacerated kidney and broken ribs to find a way to suit up and play in that playoff game. He was in the elevator at my hotel. That was a surprise. I stayed at the Courtyard by Marriott at the Navy Yard because I had a wedding to go to at the end of my Flyers road trip, and here we are checking out of the hotel. Elevator doors open. There's Zach Ertz. I was like, holy cow. I said, how you feeling? I feel good. I couldn't believe the guy was playing, no less. I mean, that effect where he draws the top defenders, where he draws their coverage, makes the other guys better.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny part is he's the second best athlete in his family.
There you go. Julie likes that. Julie Ertz, of course. Dave Weinberg's with us. A couple things to wrap up with because you also covered boxing for so many years. And Clarissa Shields fought last night in Atlantic City. A big fight as she beats Ivana. How do you say? I don't know her last name. Junior middleweight. Habazin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So Clarissa Shields wins last night. And then there's a big fight tonight. My man, Jesse Hart is fighting against Joe Smith Jr. I'm laughing because Bernard Hopkins once put his hand on my stomach and said the reason he was so good is he keeps in shape, not like my man here. And then he rubbed my belly.
Yeah, Yeah, Bernard's a funny guy, that's for sure.
Yeah. So what do you think?
Yeah, I was actually ringside last night covering the Shields fight for a website called Sweet Science based out of Las Vegas. So I was back doing what I love to do, which is watching the fights and covering them, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, Clarissa she made her statement once again as the best female fighter in the world today. She claims to be the greatest of all time. I think that Christy Martin and Layla Ali might have something to say about that. And the fact that she's only had 10 pro fights, I don't think she quite has the reputation established yet. But there's no question that there's really no one out there that can really challenge her at the moment. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes forward, because the problem with being so good is that when you don't have much competition, people tend to forget about you. The crowd wasn't the best last night.
Okay.
Maybe it's because it's the second weekend in January, and wind's blowing off the boardwalk. People probably don't feel like going, but it's gonna be incumbent upon Clarissa. Well, I guess boxing in general, if someone can finally step up and give her a legitimate challenge, I think that would help women's boxing in general. As far as the fight tonight, I'll be back there again at Hard Rock.
All right.
For Hart and Smith, and that's a tremendous fight. You mentioned Bernard Hopkins, because Smith is the one who ended his career, knocking him out of the ring in California in 2016, and Jesse was very close with him. Jesse is also the son of Eugene Cyclone Hart, a legendary Philly fighter, and he's very close to Bernard, and he's kind of taken this as a desire to exact some sort of revenge, I guess, for what Smith did to his hero.
Very much so. So that's Jesse Hart and Joe Smith Jr. tonight at Hard Rock. Clarissa Shields last night was at Ocean Casino and Resort. See, Dave,
correct.
The people that say that boxing is dead in Atlantic City, tell them to go pound sand. They're wrong.
Well, they're off to an encouraging start, which I wrote. Boxing has been on a rough road, a little bit of a slide in Atlantic City the last few years. There were only 5 cards total in Atlantic City last year, so the fact that we have 2 in the first month of the year, that's an encouraging sign and bodes well. I'm just hoping that the other promoters notice it, and various casino properties realize that boxing is a viable option when it comes to your entertainment menu, and here's hoping that boxing makes a little bit of a comeback in 2020.
And if you say boxing, you got to say MMA. Every time I look up, it seems like I keep seeing Conor McGregor. Like, I mean, think what you will about the guy outside the octagon. In the octagon, he's a draw.
Yeah, he is. I mean, it would be nice to see him at Boardwalk Hall. I'm not too optimistic about the UFC coming back anytime soon. They kind of had some logistical issues with their last time here last year, or 2 years ago, I'm sorry. And I don't know if the Boardwalk Hall is big enough to hold like a mega fight, but I do think that the UFC should. They went to Ocean for a couple of times, for crying out loud. But even if they don't come, you have Cage Fury at Hard Rock. You have Ring of Combat at Tropicana. You have the Professional Fighters League at Ocean, which they've been thrilled with their 2 years there, and they're coming back again in 2020 for at least 4 shows. So you're right, MMA is definitely on the rise, and Atlantic City seems to be an important part of their project.
And we're pleased to have Dave Weinberg as part of our 97.3 ESPN team.